Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here with my friend Alex Miller, who is a husband, a father, council member for the city of Seaside, among other things. So we're going to get to know him a little bit better today. And we've been friends now for a little while, had a lot of mutual friends over the years, and finally we're able to connect recently, just in the last year or two. And just always admired all the work that you're doing for the community, and would love to just take a minute to get to know more about you and kind of the work that you're up to. So, Alex, thank you for joining me today.
Jordan, thank you so much for the invitation, and kudos to you for going and speaking with the elected in our area, and for hearing people out, and for really kind of bridging the gap. So I know that, speaking from all of us, we really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Well, it's mutual, and I'm just grateful to be part of the community and kind of share conversations. Not everybody, I know the government is important and has to work a certain way, but one of the challenges with local government is the accessibility. A lot of times meetings are during the day when people are at work, or they're later at night when people got to go to bed or put their kids to bed. And so sometimes local government participation is hard for a lot of folks because just the way it's scheduled. But it's hard to really work around that, right? You can only accommodate so much. So I know that you really care about the community, and you invest a lot of time in those things. So thank you for all that you do. But before you kind of got into all this, give us a bit of the backstory, like where'd you grow up and kind of where are you from?
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick on your
Yeah.
accessibility, we pride ourselves in Seaside of being as accessible as possible, and our meetings start at 5 o'clock, and I so then in the evening people are able to attend, hopefully, and I can always be reached, and we'll dive into that. But yeah, I was born in San Jose, and my parents were from Los Gatos,
Cool.
and I grew up in a pretty privileged kind of white neighborhood, and I never, it wasn't really for me. And for at a young age, my parents would take me up to Monterey, and we would ride the Surreys around along the Grove Trail from Monterey to Pacific Grove. The four-person bicycles.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And my parents at like age 8 or 9, they have me on video saying, I want to live here. And so yeah, when I at 17, I was applying to colleges, and I applied to one school. I applied to Cal State Monterey Bay. This was
Awesome.
in 2002. It was a brand new school. So I applied like on a Tuesday, and then on a Wednesday I got a letter back saying, welcome, you're an otter. and
Awesome.
and I haven't looked back. And I moved here. I lived my first year in the dorms, and then after that, in 2003, I was 19 years old, and I got an apartment on San Pablo, and then I was lucky enough to buy my house in 2006 here in Seaside. And I've always been interested in politics. And some things happened, and while I was living in Seaside, and I'll dive into that. But I started going to council meetings, and I started going to
Mm.
council meetings about 10 years ago, and had my first race. And my first race was for county supervisor. And I ended up landing on the city council. So I'm raising my family here. Seaside's my forever home. And I really just absolutely adore and love and cherish the Monterey Peninsula.
That's awesome. I was born in Fremont, so also Bay Area roots. My mom was born in Mountain View. My dad and his family kind of came from Mexico and wound up in Watsonville. So we ended up, my parents got, when they got back together, we moved to Watsonville and then eventually Castroville after the earthquake. So I grew up kind of Castroville and Watsonville, but also on the peninsula, kind of, well, part of the Bay, I guess. So we're very fortunate to live in this area. The diversity of people and food and experiences. I mean, Los Gatos is pretty nice, but I prefer Monterey.
Absolutely. And it's so funny. It just shows what a small world this is, because Irene, my partner, is also from Fremont. And
No way.
yeah, they live off of Alvarado and Niles, right? Right.
Oh, I used to live right there too. That's crazy.
That's a small
Uh,
world. It's a small world.
what's the little town called? Niles.
Niles.
Niles Can, yeah.
Niles.
So my mom more grew up there in Fremont and Newark. I was born there, and then so I had family there, but I more grew up down here in Monterey, Santa Cruz County. But that's cool, man. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that you were in college. What did you study in college?
I studied communication. I was a
Okay.
HCOM major at CSUMB, and from there I was lucky. I went to law school in San Jose, or I started in San Francisco at Golden Gate, and then went to Lincoln Law School in San Jose. So I was driving back and forth, which was a lot of driving. But I've graduated from CSUMB and then got a law degree, and so I've been very fortunate with my education.
Great, man. And are you a practicing attorney as well?
No, I'm not. I'm in the process of finishing all of my
Okay.
requirements to get
Okay.
licensed, and
Okay.
that's my ultimate goal. But right now, I'm focused on the city council, and I work in the schools. I have a substitute teaching permit, so I do some work in the schools.
Okay.
I also do some contracting work for some legal stuff that doesn't require me to be a lawyer, but I can do
Right.
planning and
Right.
smaller jobs.
I interviewed a friend of mine, Daniela, who's also kind of in a similar boat. She is preparing to pass the bar, so not a practicing attorney in that regard, but has her law degree as well, and is a paralegal, notary, has does some legal services. I think she works for Granite now. So people don't realize that not all folks that have a law degree become attorneys, like
Right,
in court, right? A lot of them end up working in the corporate world or in the government world and having that legal expertise, not necessarily being an attorney. So people don't really understand that because there's a lot of legal dramas on TV, so that's what they assume that anyone legal is doing.
right, right.
But I've noticed, I don't know about you, I've noticed a lot of folks that end up in government do have that law background.
Yes,
Obviously, especially lawmakers, but even on the local level, which it helps you because that's what you see. I accidentally ended up in real estate and ended up in government contracting, and I wouldn't say it's my forte, but I've like accidentally wound up having to do all this legal and contract stuff. Like so
right,
I've had to learn like as I go. Um
right.
and yeah, anyway, it's super important and super interesting. How did you, I mean, that's a powerful combination, communications and law. So, how you kind of combine those now in your position as a council member.
Well, no, I mean, you got it exactly right. I mean, local government there's a lot of legal principles that having the education really helps. I mean, for example, we do a lot of land use stuff, and especially in Seaside, we just acquired a portion of Fort Ord during the Fora split, and a lot of things that come in front of the council are, easements or covenants and things, principles that you learn in law school, the foundation, and so having that was so valuable in being a council member, because a lot of it is extremely related. And that's why I think that it's important to get that education, and so that you understand how the government works. and
Yeah,
and and as I was going through law school, people would say, "Oh, what kind of lawyer do you want to be?" And I'd always say, "Oh no, I want to be in politics, and I want to be, and right now I'm living the dream, because I've always dreamt of being a council member, and here I am." So
that's awesome.
it truly is
Well,
a dream.
and people don't realize there's a difference between being a politician or being, good at campaigning versus being good at governing, right? And so, governing, a lot of it is boring meetings. A lot of it is, you know, um, understanding the legality of a lot of the different, zoning and all the different requirements and those kind of things. Like you talk about Fort Ord, that was obviously, forward closing was a big blow to the local economy. I think it's recovered. CSUMB helped with that quite a bit and all these other developments, but Fort Ord specifically was kind of a jurisdiction, excuse my language, it was a jurisdictional clusterfuck because it was federal because of the military. It was also state because of some of the state parks and the beach right there. Also, city of Seaside, city of Marina were fighting over it. So then you had the Fort Ord Reuse Authority that was kind of there for a little while, but that was also controversial. So there's all been all these over the years. Everyone's like, well, why can't we just have this? It's like, well, I wish we could, but there's powerful interests that want this, they want this, and then everyone's kind of fighting over it. And so now at least we're seeing some progress in Marina and Seaside, and I appreciate you because you've been part of that. But it was a long time coming. I mean, pretty much my whole life here, I've been in this area since the early 90s, and I've seen it. I remember when Fort Ord was open. I remember when CSUMB opened, and now seeing all the development in Marina and Seaside is pretty crazy. But it takes years. It takes years.
Well, I remember driving down Emgin and seeing in Marina and seeing the vacant, and I even pictured in my head, I was like, okay, that's where they're going to put a lot
Yeah,
of homes. I could see it. And then sure
yeah.
enough, now fast forward 10 years later, all the homes that I envisioned are there. And it is good for our community. And Seaside is just on the brink of what's called Campus Town. And I don't know if you know too much about it.
A little bit, yeah.
Cool. Well, we just had a groundbreaking. The lieutenant
Congratulations,
governor,
yeah.
yeah, thank you. The lieutenant governor of California was there. It was a big event. And there's a affordable housing component to it. And Campus Town is roughly about 1,500 homes, very close to CSUMB, right by the Union Stadium across the street. When
Oh,
you get
cool.
off of Light Fighter, all that property there is going to be single family homes, apartments, and then retail, restaurants and parks. And it's one project that every group in Seaside kind of got behind, like Sustainable Seaside
Good.
and the environmental groups. They got behind this project. So it was really well vetted. But like you said, it's been 10 years. And
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah, and I'm not hardcore one way or the other ideologically. I'm just more of like, let's get things done. Let's do what's the best we can do for the most people, right? And so to me, uh, that might look different from issue to issue. And I think on a local level, I think you can put party affiliation to the side. And not to say that that doesn't necessarily play a role in your ideology, but on a local level, it shouldn't, right? On a local level, it should be about, all right, let's do what's best for each other as neighbors. Let's work through these challenges together. And I know some people like to draw lines in the sand and only vote one way, even for local issues. But I don't think that makes sense. I think you have to take it issue by issue, right? And I mean, not everybody agrees with that. That's fine. But I think we all want to just we hopefully we all want to protect the environment. We all want to, make sure that the, multimillionaire residents as well as the low income residents and everybody in between has access. Now, one of the challenges that I've seen and the frustrations, especially for us millennials, is that um, there's really not a strong middle class like there once was. And so a lot of that conversation becomes more about rich versus poor. And politically, it's easy to kind of pick one side or the other. But my concern is really more for that middle class, even though economically it's not as strong as it once was. There are a lot of people that are in that boat where they don't qualify for subsidized anything, but they're also not they don't have enough resources to be able to afford the cost of things now on the peninsula. And so there's that constant tension of, certain people that are protecting their interests and not in my backyard, and other people who want everything for free, and or to kind of, it's like we're that constant tension. And then you have a
right.
lot of hardworking folks in the middle that are just like, man, I would like to be able to afford a home in this area, that's safe and nice, and doesn't have to be a 4,000 square feet, but like something reasonable at a reasonable entry level price. And that just doesn't exist. It's either over 1 million or it's low income housing. It's like there's nothing in between.
No, and one of the things that struck out to me with what you just said was, about politics being more local and the issues. And Tim O'Neill, who was the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, said all politics is local. And I really do. I'm telling you, Jordan, I
Yeah,
stick to that. And people call me and want to talk national politics with me. I just don't have the time for it.
right,
I really am, and I love dealing with local issues that I have some say over,
right,
and
right.
at the national level, it's so polarized that both sides are just, just because they don't have maybe necessarily the right reasons, but that's what their party's doing. Where
You're right.
you said at the local level, we have a lot of, we have a lot much more influence. And I was listening to Supervisor Glenn Church, Monterey County Board of Supervisor, and this is some things that he talks about. He talks about we need to have not 4,000 square foot homes, but
Right,
smaller homes, entry level, where
right.
a family can afford to come. Because even in Seaside up on the hill, and the house might be, older and need a lot of repair, even those are upwards of 700, 800,000.
I
And
know I'm a realtor. I know.
yeah, no, I know
Yeah,
and people that are just got married or just had their first child, we want to give that family an opportunity for success and give that child a forever home. And one of the things that we have to work on in Seaside is absolutely that is making it so that the people of Seaside can afford these. And one of the ways we're doing it is by, with our campus town is having affordable housing. I just had a meeting with the city manager today. We're talking about putting some money into building a couple affordable homes at one of our parks that's not used, and just coming up with creative ways. We can't just build on Fort Ord and every house be 2 million. That's
Well,
not going to work.
right, and so I know that low income housing is a buzzword. I I don't think necessarily we always in every project need low income housing or affordable housing. We need housing that's affordable. And
Right.
those are two different things. And what's tough is that, of course, we need a percentage of every development to go toward affordable housing, right? Folks that maybe would never be able to save the down payment or would never be able to afford market rate. There needs to be space allowed for that.
Right.
But then there's also this other demographic, which I believe is the majority, which could afford a reasonable rate, but those homes don't exist. They're either these, over $1 million, over $2 million, and at today's rates, that's, we're talking about 7, 8 grand a month on $1 million mortgage.
Right.
Right. And that's, I mean, they say it's funny, every financial expert, a lot of them are like in Tennessee or other places like Dave Ramsey. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
your mortgage shouldn't exceed 25% of your income. It's like, well, not if you live in California or New York, right? None of those
Yeah.
rules apply. But
Right.
obviously it shouldn't be over 50. And in some cases in this area, I know it's a hot button issue. A lot of times housing costs are 50% or more of local residents' income, and that is just not sustainable,
It's
right?
not.
And so it's at a breaking point, and it's not any one particular person's fault, but now we're dealing with the aftermath of decisions that were made decades ago
Right.
or decisions that weren't made decades ago. Now we're like at this breaking point, and so it's crazy, man. And I
Right.
appreciate the work that you and your colleagues are doing because it's not easy. I know there's a
Well,
lot of polarizing opinions about it.
I mean, believe it or not, this is like one of the most talked about issues that I mean, California just in general, one of the biggest issues is housing. And we see it all over the place. And in Seaside, at least Jordan, it's the topic of conversation in Seaside. We're talking about it. We're
Yeah,
talking about it at council
yeah,
meetings. We're talking about solutions. We have short-term rental TOT tax, which is the Airbnb and the Verbos. We tax that at, I think it's 12%, and we use that money to explore affordable housing projects, but
to offset,
uh,
yeah.
to offset. But but you're right. It can't just be that one group of. It's got to be people that want first homes that can afford these, but also get some kind of help so that they can make the down payment or that they're able to move in. And like you said, it's a fine line. And if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them.
Well, no, it's hard. Obviously, I wear different hats. I wear a hat as a real estate professional and a business-minded person, but I'm also a human being, and I grew up in a community that was not affluent, and my family wasn't, and there were families that were worse off than us, and that neighborhood that I grew up in has not gotten much better since I was there in the 90s, and I love that community, but it's also like, it's reflective of the demographic, right?
Right,
And I wish a lot of times they'll be like, well, why can't Castroville have what Carmel has? And I'm like, well, it'd be great, but Castroville's not Carmel. We're Castroville. And I think we can do a better job of taking pride in that and taking better care of our community, but also know that we don't have the same resources, right? And so I do appreciate and respect what CSAT has done because I think you guys are doing a lot with what you have, right?
right,
You don't have the population of Salinas, but I think you do a good job with what you do have. But I'm sure there's always competing arguments and agendas and different things. But even with Seaside, I'm like, think about how much red tape it takes to get something built. And even though you guys are doing a good job now and there's momentum, I still, even though Seaside has come a long way, I can think of a few properties that like could be easily redeveloped for something else, and
right,
they're just sitting there. I know they just had the new housing development there on Broadway, and it's like a new resource center for the county. So that's great. But again, took years, right? Took a
right.
lot of work with people like yourself and Supervisor Askew and different ones that push for that and different community organizers. But These things take time. And again, it was years and years of neglect that kind of led to this breaking point. And so now the current leadership is just like trying to balance all of it, plus all the state requirements and the federal issues. It's like,
Right.
man,
Yeah, well, I mean, developers do when they come in and they build these, they it has to pencil out for them, right? Like
right,
if all their units, if we cap one of the things that I'm a big fan of, and I know Marina has done it and San Francisco has done it, is deed restricting certain properties so that they maintain a certain level of work, a certain it's not they're for families like that we're talking about that can
right.
afford a first home, but that they're restricted on if they go to sell it, it's that home is designated for that purpose. And so, I am a fan of that. The government has to be included in that. But like you said, with Castroville and wanting to be like Carmel, and we get a lot of that too. Well, why isn't Seaside like Monterey? Well, why isn't Seaside like Pebble Beach? But
Right, right,
right, but we're
right,
Seaside, right? We're
right.
we're a unique and a really diverse and wonderful community here. That we don't want to be like them. We want to be our own unique style. And so the housing thing is
Yeah.
certainly top priority for the city.
Well, one of the things that I agree that same mentality of towards Seaside, I have it with Cashville as well. It's like, hey, it's hard not to compare, but let's not compare because they're different circumstances. Let's be the best version of what we could be. In this case of Cashville, it's not yet a city. I mean, that has been debated at different points. It's kind of laid out like a city, but it doesn't necessarily have the population or the tax base to support some of the city services that, understandably the residents really want, right? So the county kind of steps in or special districts. But then you look at how's Delray Oaks and Sand City cities? Like, you know, and I always thought to myself, this is before you were in office, but I thought, who signed off on that development in Sand City, getting all that tax revenue, and Seaside gets all the traffic, where Costco and all that is? I'm like, who? How did this happen? Like, who let all this happen? I know you guys have a good relationship with your neighbors, but I'm like, man, it just doesn't seem fair.
Well, I think Seaside has gone through decades and decades of different leadership and different ideas and different visions, and I mean, I would say that's kind of a symbol of how Seaside has been treated in the past. And it's been treated not the greatest. And one of the things that when I first ran for county supervisor, one of the first things that I was saying was, hey, we got to make sure that Seaside is gets more county resources. There's more
Yeah,
gets
yeah,
more things at the county. I didn't win that election, but now on the city council, I find myself in positions often where I'm like, wait a second, they can't do that to Seaside, and then me taking that personally. Right,
yeah,
like somebody's saying that they're going to try to take advantage of us or come through us with a certain project, and it wears on you. It really
yeah.
does. The council member, it wears on you. So it's
Well,
but
they really feel that in North County, at least in Seaside, there are city resources, and government, but in North County, there's no cities, right? So
I
District 2, technically there is, but they count part of Salinas, but really that's not North County, that's Salinas, right? And North County doesn't have an incorporated city. When you think of like Ferndale, Castroville, Las Lomas, Pajaro, those towns, all of which are great towns, but they don't have the same infrastructure. So with Seaside, it does have a lot of potential, and we say the same thing in North County is, hey, we don't need to take anything from anyone else or be better than anyone else. We just want our fair share.
right.
We're not asking for more than anyone else. We're just asking for what is owed to us and what's fair. And I think, one of those things that's tough, and Seaside deals with this, all the attention and traffic and hotel tax goes to Monterey, Carmel, Pebble Beach, but the traffic and the congestion and the damage to roads comes through Castroville and Seaside and Marina. And now Marina and Seaside are capturing some of those dollars because they've improved, but it's still yet to continue down Highway 1 a little bit,
Exactly. No, you got it exactly right. And get $2 billion. $2 billion drive right through Seaside every year and go to Pebble Beach and Monterey and Carmel. And one of the things that I've been really passionate about is trying to capture some of that. And I think that one way to do it is by having a really cool, neat downtown, a
Yeah,
family-friendly downtown with restaurants and bar, a place where you can have a drink and
yeah,
a wine bar and good food. We already have great food, but really having like, a really nice downtown area,
Yeah.
we can actually draw from those people driving to Monterey. And we're getting there.
Yeah.
On Lower Broadway, we did a road diet,
Yep.
made it a one lane, and we're working on the infrastructure, but we can't stop the momentum.
Right.
We
I
really
went to
got
Other
it.
Brother for the first time a few weeks back. It was
What
pretty
did you
cool.
think? What'd you
That was
think?
cool. It was cool. I
Was
see. I see what the hype is about,
was
and yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I see what the hope is and what the plan is, and you're not going to reverse 100 years of tourism and reputation, right? Obviously, Pebble Beach and Carmel and Monterey are famous. Pacific Grove are famous for a reason, right? And we love those cities too. Obviously, they're our neighbors, and I like to enjoy those restaurants and those views and those experiences as much as the next person. But like you said, I think Seaside and Marina and Castroville and Salinas have always been more the blue collar side of making those tourist destinations possible, right? That's where people work, and then that's where people live. That's kind of always how it's been. But it's like, why can't we improve where we live? And maybe Seaside and Marina and Castroville and Salinas will never be the tourist destinations that Monterey and Carmel are.
Yeah.
They got a 100-year head start on the branding, but it doesn't mean it can't be a great place to live, which it's definitely improved. I mean, just in the last 10 years, I know Seaside, just visually driving through, you can tell it's already improved quite a bit.
We've done a lot. We've improved the aesthetics. We've lowered the crime rate by over 40%.
Wow.
I mean, we've done so many things to make Seaside, put Seaside on the map, and we just can't stop. But I have to ask, when you went to Other Brother, was it pretty busy?
Yeah, it what I liked about it was that you could tell it was a place that people wanted to be. Like it wasn't, you go to any of these corporate places, right? Like a Chili's or a Applebee's. It's like it's cool because they're everywhere in the country and they have a ton of commercials and they're like it's a good value, right? You're gonna go there, you're gonna have a good time, you're gonna have some food, you have some drinks, watch the game, whatever. But with Other Brother, it was cool because not only was the beer good, but it was you could sense the community there. Like I was sitting there having a beer after golf with some friends, and then I watched in a bunch of college kids come in and go upstairs, and you could tell they were like meeting up to play games, and it was like, okay, this is like a spot for community, which was cool.
Right, and that's what I was
It
getting at.
wasn't just a bar,
It's not just a bar, right?
Right.
It's a
It's
place.
family friendly.
Right. It's like a soul, right?
Yeah.
It's a place where we can get together and get to know each other, and get to have those conversations with each other. And I asked if it's busy because this is kind of the proof of the concept here is that
Yeah.
there are customers. There are people that want that. I always say, like, whenever you go travel anywhere in the world, you always seem to like the local spot, right? Where do
Right.
the locals go eat? And
Right.
that's what I envision for Seaside. I
Yeah.
envision that people come to the Monterey Peninsula. You can do your tourist stuff in Monterey. That's fine.
Right.
But if you
Right.
want to come to where the locals eat on our
Right.
peninsula, they come to Seaside. And if we can capture that vision,
Yeah.
that there's a big market for that. And and downtown at Other Brother, when I go there, it's always packed. And so
Yeah.
there's a need. So if there's any developers watching this, please
Yeah.
look into
Well,
Seaside and
what Seaside has more than any of the other cities, in my opinion, I mean, Monterey maybe and PG maybe, but Seaside has the best views, I think.
uh, yeah.
As far, just views of the bay, Seaside is one of the best, in the whole
Yeah.
area. And so, yeah, just really capitalizing on that. And for us, even little old Castroville, I live in Salinas now, but I grew up in Castroville, and little old Castroville, I've always thought, man, this is the gateway to the bay. We have that bridge, that catwalk, It's like
Yeah.
as soon as you cross that, you're basically, when 156 turned into Highway 1, which is Castroville, that's the entrance to the peninsula, right? And so it's like the gateway, and we never really cared to market it that way, but I might at some point. But but I look at it that way too. And same thing with Seaside. It's like once you're in Seaside, like you're pretty much there. You're pretty much, and but the hotels are a little more reasonable. The
Right.
restaurants are a little more reasonable.
Right.
But
Right.
you're right there. So you're pretty much, I mean, obviously Embassy Suites is like an iconic location. A lot of conferences there. It's probably what the tallest building in the area,
By, by
or
a
one of
lot.
them. Yeah. So
By a lot.
and now as the airport is expanding, I mean, there's an obvious, sibling rivalry amongst local towns and cities that's normal and healthy, just like high school rivalries. But at the same time, it's like the better each community does, the better we all do, right? So as these improvements are coming with the Monterey Airport, for example, that's going to benefit everybody.
Right. Yeah. No,
Lots-
you hit the nail on the head. And to the views, when I was running in my first campaign, I would go walk door to door and I would walk up people's stairs, knock on the door, and the first thing I always did was I turned around and up on the hill and turned around and went, "Oh wow!" And these people would these homeowners would have just, I mean, our views are way better. Put it on the record that our views are way better than any other city
It's true.
just because of where we are.
It's
And
true. Yeah.
you're looking at the peninsula and the houses on Upper Seaside, and you walk up the stairs and you look back. It's just it's mesmerizing. And I'm a guy that likes to travel, and I've seen other parts of the world, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything like Monterey Peninsula. It's
Well,
true.
Amalfi Coast in Italy is pretty nice, but yeah. But yes, Monterey Bay and Seaside's views are can go toe to toe with anywhere in the world. I agree. I
That's
agree.
it.
So knowing that it's a world-class destination, it's that challenge of like, okay, it's a world-class destination. We have things like Concourse d'Elegance and Monterey Bay Aquarium, but those aren't happening all day, every day. And the average local person isn't participating in some of those things like concourse or the pro-am or whatever, right? So that, I mean, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy and appreciate the legacy of golf and classic cars and all that kind of thing. But like the day-to-day person who's from Seaside or Marina or Salinas, who's just trying to like put food on the table, provide for their family, like where are those opportunities? That's one thing that's tough is obviously agriculture in the valley and hospitality on the peninsula, but like not everyone works in those fields. And where are those kind of more, where are those middle class jobs where you can afford a home in this area? That's the challenge that we have moving forward is there's not a lot of space or infrastructure or water on the peninsula for large scale industry. So where do we go? How is it just going to be a retirement community? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, once again, like Seaside's luckier because we did get a lot of land on Fort Ord, and there's a 60-acre parcel that's right off of the freeway. It's called Main Gate. We call it Main Gate. It's 65 acres. The state has
Is that off Light Fighter?
yes, right off
Okay.
of Light Fighter, right off
Yeah.
of Light Fighter and Highway 1, that little corner. And the city of Seaside is putting out an RFP for somebody to come with a proposal of some kind of light industry that creates jobs. That creates something, where people can work in the city, whether it be retail or restaurant or hospitality. I mean, even the campus town is slotted for hotels, and I mean, obviously we're only talking about a certain type of industry, which is
Right.
not necessarily the most high paying industry.
Right.
People in Seaside, and so that's where some of the challenges are, and I think as the government and as a city official, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to recognize that like it's not going to be half of your pay or a quarter of your paycheck. It's going to be half of your paycheck or even more just for your housing. So people have to double up. Both the spouses have to work, and
Right.
and then what happens there is the poor
Right.
children suffer because no one's taking care of them. And so as the city, I think some of the things we do is we provide care for kids. We provide resources for families. We
Oh, wow.
yeah, we absolutely do what we can within our realm.
Well, one of the things I'll say is Seaside definitely has probably per capita some of the best like nonprofits and some of the best community organizations. I remember growing up going to the Oldermeyer Center to swim and have
Wow.
birthday parties and I mean it's just the rich history of whether it's civil rights activism or whether it's the military there in Seaside. It's going to be interesting because you see a lot of folks that maybe bought their home, they were in the military, got out, stayed, and that's part of the diversity of Marina and Seaside. I grew up in church in Castroville, but a lot of the folks that attended the church I went to were from Seaside and Marina, and they were, children of the military. And the diversity there was, I mean, it was amazing. Every kind of Pacific Islander you can imagine, black, white, Asian, Latino, everything in between, and it was pretty cool. And it was kind of a microcosm of the greater community. And so I'm super grateful. I'm still in touch with a lot of those people that we mentioned earlier. And it's going to take all of us kind of working together. And I understand the polarization at the national level, and I get it. I didn't vote for Trump, but I understand why people did. And we're seeing this crazy gear off to the start to the year that we've had, and there's some people that are celebrating and some people that are devastated, and my heart goes out to whichever side of the fence you're on. It's tough. I don't like to have those conversations locally because it gets in the way of progress.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
people will either approve or disown you based on those
Right.
choices. And I get it. People are passionate about it, but like you said, you get stuck in these echo chambers, especially on social media, and you only listen to people that agree with you. Well, that's a very dangerous thing.
It is. It truly is. Yeah, it truly is, and that's why I have to say I'm registered as a no party preference
Yeah,
myself, and I'm as purple as they get. And I have to live by that. I have to do what's right for my city, and that
yeah.
and anything other than that kind of for me gets in the way. And I wanted to go back at the very beginning of this. As I was explaining where I'm from, I was raised in a very affluent a community of Los Gatos, and I said it wasn't me. And it's not me. I much prefer living in a community as diverse as Seaside. I mean, my wife is Filipina, and so we get that. But just on my block, just on my street, I have my neighbors on one side are from India, and a neighbor on the other side from Oaxaca, and then I have African American neighbors, and so just my street alone, and we all get.
So it smells good at dinner time on
It
your street,
smells
is what you're
great.
saying.
It smells great. And as a foodie, and I know you like to, I can
I
tell
do.
you
Yeah,
eat
yeah, I
too.
do.
I like to
Yeah.
eat too.
Yep.
We're foodies, right?
Yep.
And so it's an opportunity for, and when I first got here to Seaside, I started coaching soccer, and I've been coaching soccer forever. And it's kind of my way of giving back to Seaside. And I just love seeing all the kids come together and all different races. And they're all great kids. They're all great kids. And if
Yeah.
we as adults can get there where we just respect each other no matter what, I
Right.
think we're gonna be living in a better world if we can accept that. So
Yeah, and I think, it's tough. I can't tell. It's not my place to tell another adult how to feel or what to think or how to, conduct themselves, but I think there's been so much noise on either side, right? That I think unfortunately they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? But most extreme views are the ones that get the most attention, right? Because negativity sells, right? So that you see it on the media, you see it on social media, and everyone can. I mean, we're human. I get distracted by it too, and I can go down those rabbit holes too. But I try my best to protect my mind and my heart from a lot of that negativity. It doesn't mean I'm not informed. I mean, you and I are nerds about this stuff. I'm very informed. I'm
yes.
reading all the time. I'm watching different. I go back and forth from different perspectives and podcasts just to get that balanced view and try to be as open-minded as I can be. But what I am sure about, even though my approach might be different, I'm sure about respecting people, protecting people, doing what's best for the community, even if we disagree on how to go about that. And I think you've seen that. You've seen it as a leader yourself and as knowing the law. Um, there are people who do have a bad agenda, and it's your job to protect, right? Then there's others who don't have a bad agenda, they just have a different a goal than that person, and they're fighting over the same piece of land, or they're fighting over the same priority for the city or whatever it might be. And in that case, you it's like, hey, you do your best proposal, you do your best proposal, and we'll see who wins. We'll see who's got the best idea, and get organized around it, and back up your opinions. It's one thing to have opinions. Back it up with facts. Back it up with proof. Back it up with resources, and it will get done eventually.
Yeah. And when you talk about politics in particular, like local, this is designed for everybody to be involved. This is designed for people to come, and so you're right. You do get a fraction of people that are in it for, themselves, or for motivation, for money, or something like that. But a majority of the people
Right.
are good, and come down to city hall and public comment because they actually care.
Right.
They care about the community. And so we focus on that, and we focus on that. And the people that are the bad actors, or people that might have alternative motives, you just have to recognize that, and you have to
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
understand that, and don't get sucked into that. And
Right.
that sometimes is a hard thing. And being on the city council, my dad always says, my dad's one of my biggest, I love my dad the most, and he's one of my biggest supporters. And he's such a great guy. He was an old college professor and author, and he's been kind of gearing me along. And he always says to me, be true to yourself, Alex. Be true to
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
And when it comes down to really hard issues, I take that advice and really like look into myself and say, what, I do a lot of self-analysis in my in deciding these issues.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because if you don't do that, then you're not grounded and you just kind of vote where you're not as informed as a member of the council.
Well,
So
that's leadership, right? Doing
yeah,
the right thing even when it's hard or even when it's
even
not
it's hard.
popular.
Right.
And it's easy to kind of give in
Right.
one way or the other to the pressure, but all you can do is do your own research and let your conscience guide you in your decision making, and
That's right.
then live with the results and then own the results, right? A lot of people um, aren't willing to do that, and it's not easy because no matter what you decide, half the people are going to be pissed at you, and
Right.
they're gonna call you names on social media, and it is what it is. And you have to have thick skin, and you have to believe that what you're doing is the best thing for the community you represent. And if people disagree, then they'll vote you out. But if they continue to give you that confidence, that means that they trust that you're going to make the right decision for everyone.
That's exactly right. And I do have to bring up, recently I've been watching a lot on Instagram and on Facebook. I've been watching a lot about the Salinas City Council and the Salinas, the five, I think 4 or 5 members were just turned the seat turned in November. And we see now, large campaign donations on certain politicians, and we see now, decisions being made, even though there was so much community support for an affordable house, or excuse me, the rental restrictions. And this is an example of, we really have to listen to our community, have town halls, be accessible, really hearing them out. And the prior city council spent all of those years getting this ordinance to something that makes sense, and overnight, one foul swoop, it's overturned. And that's really challenging for a city, because also think of all the staff time and the staff resources that went in the last
Mm.
couple of years to make this thing perfect, and all of a
And that
sudden it's
and
just,
that and that's what's hard is that, the community, rightfully so, expresses their frustration one way or the other. And a lot of times it's the staff at the county and city level that are taking the brunt of these complaints. And the elected officials sometimes, they might come in and vote, but they're not the ones there on Monday morning dealing with the upset
yeah,
resident. It's
yeah,
staff, right? And so,
right.
I mean, you're right. I don't, I tend to be in favor of kind of, going with the state law and not necessarily adding too much more at the local level. But you're right, there was a process, got approved, it went through, and maybe there should have been more consideration or letting it go a little longer before seeing the results. And it's tough. I was in those meetings, and I mean that's tough. There's a lot of fallout from that. I understand kind of both sides, and there's just a lot of misinformation, and
Yes,
there's so much. I don't know. People, I don't think people are listening to each other.
that's
And
right.
and
That's
I
exactly.
also think that, it's certain decisions are easier and more palatable politically.
Mhm.
And it's easy to say things like, "Oh, well, they're just voting for their donors." And it's like, okay, well, they're also smart people who got elected. And so if their election wasn't valid, was yours,
Mhm.
right? So you have to apply those same principles.
No, absolutely.
So it's like if you're saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, they're corrupt and they just got put in office," it's like, "Well, then how did you get in office?"
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, is it? And so we have to have a base level of respect for the position.
For
And
sure.
if we just come in and say on a local level anyway, if we just come and say, "Oh, well, they're all just bought and paid for," and it's like, well, that to me that's kind of lazy intellectually. Like, let's understand, why did they win the election? How did they win the election? And is there a mandate from that portion of the population that way wasn't happy with the previous leadership? Maybe they were. I don't know. It's like, like Trump was saying, "Oh, the election of 2020 was stolen." Okay, but 2016 and 2024 were legit, but 20 was stolen.
Right.
Well, which is it? How can we have rigged elections one year and totally
Right.
fine when you win? Like, so it's complicated. I understand both sides, and I think the conversation is not over. Obviously, people responded very passionately. I was in that room, not for the entire meeting because I had class that night, but it's a conversation that's going to continue. I don't think that conversation's over.
And when I said earlier, when I said, the campaign donations, I find the whole process extremely fascinating. Money doesn't necessarily always win, right? And the reason why those council members in Salinas had won that election is because their voters wanted to see a change. Their voters were not happy with what was happening, and maybe that rental program had something to do with it. And those seats were overturned, and money doesn't always win. And I'm with you, because Seaside is a general law city, and we follow the state law when our code is silent. Now other cities are often charter cities. We are not. We are
Yep.
a general law city. We follow the state law, and I think that the state has a lot of restrictions. I mean, the state
The
recently,
state of California is pretty restrictive. I'm
it's
surprised.
very restrictive, and
Pretty,
they already cap. The
yeah,
state of California already caps how much
yeah,
you can how much more you
right,
can raise the rent. It's 10% or 5%, depending on the situation.
right.
I think it's typically 5%. I mean, the state of California in itself has books and law books that are like,
Right.
I heard a statistic that if California was its own country, it would have the third largest law books in the world.
Oh my God.
If
Well,
California,
we're the fourth largest economy now,
and
so
we're
it
the
makes
fourth
sense that
largest
we
economy.
have the
Yeah,
fourth most law books. Brother,
literally.
we could go on and on.
Yeah.
I look forward
Yeah.
to doing this again in person and also maybe again online. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook quite frequently, and that's my official handle is Seaside Council Member Alex Miller, and also my website, www.alexhmiller.com. And call me, send me a text. My phone number is 831-777-8317. Please don't black that portion out. I want everybody to have my number,
Yeah, of course.
and text me, call me. Tell me when I'm doing good. Tell me when I'm doing bad. Tell me when you want to see something different, and text and calls, and come to City Hall. If you're a Seaside resident, come down, be engaged, be part of the process. We need you. We
I
need
love
more
that.
voices. We need more voices. And the more people we get together, the better the city's going to be.
I love that, and I appreciate that. And and for the record, I don't think either one of us is saying one way or the other which way the Salinas Council should have voted because we're not on the Salinas Council.
Okay.
But we are saying that I don't think the conversation is over, and
Right.
I think hopefully this is a wake up call for the entire community, whichever side of the fence you're on, to get more involved and engaged, and
Right.
really, especially which they did. And they have been, but even more so, people I want to see get involved and substantive conversations beyond just sound bites on social media, right? It's not just about the gotcha moments on social media. It's about like, let's go, and outside of council meetings, because those aren't the most productive. Let's have actual town halls, actual sit downs where we bring property owners, business owners, and renters to the table and work through some of this because it can't get decided in one council meeting, like you said.
Exactly right. And if you take the number of people that were there in Salinas, and then you take the overall population, it's 1, 2, 3% of the population
Right,
that's involved. Same in Seaside, maybe 300, 400 people at the most come
right.
down and are engaged out of a population of 36. But hey, it's been an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure on the show.
Thanks, man.
I was actually so honored that we were able to connect, and
Yeah, man.
this has been so much fun. And
Yeah.
uh,
Well, we're gonna do it again. Like I said, I have a feeling we're gonna do it again in a different format and definitely in person.
yeah,
I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and
me too.
it's gonna take all of us to make a community better. We might disagree on the approach, but I know at the end of the day, you just want what's best for Seaside and for Monterey County, and I do as well. So have a great night, man. Say hello to your family, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, man.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.